Hey everyone, Once Bitten here with my studio update for June 2013. I haven't been doing these things every month, but I'm not sure that I ever planned on doing them every month. But there seems to be a lot of things going on with my Warhammer fantasy hobby that aren't being captured in the games necessarily. So I wanted to give an overview right up front of what I'm going to talk about, so you can decide what, if any, parts of this update are worth watching for you. Most of it's going to be on painting projects. I mean, that's kind of what a studio update is. So you can see the four categories that I'm going to cover. And then at the very end, I'm going to talk about my trip to Europe that's coming up very soon. So for those of you that are in the US, that may have zero interest for you. And but for those, if I have any viewers in the UK or Germany especially, please watch that. Alright, so first category is nights. It's actually inaccurate. I should just say night. I'm not really tackling a lot of Bretonnian painting currently. Because I really just want to wait till the new book comes out, even if that's in a year and a half or something, before I do a ton more. But I'm in the midst of doing the campaign with Malorian and Sustainable Center, and I was giving Malorian grief about how I'll probably paint more Bretonnian stuff than he does through the campaign, even though he has nothing painted and I have pretty much everything painted. So this is that. But one of the things I'm doing with painting is, instead of tackling a new project, I just wanted to practice with some new painting techniques. So one thing I'm doing here at this night is I'm purposely not doing anything complicated, because I feel like I'm not an artist. I can't freehand anything, and especially these 5th edition model nights. I mean, there's only so much you can do. And quite frankly, like when I look at the 5th edition book, I don't like how most of those nights look, even though there's some great painting skill going into it. So one little thing I was doing here was trying the idea of, if you're going to put two colors next to each other, put a black border in between them. And so I played around with that for the first time. It looks better in person than it does in this picture, because this picture is so blown up. But I'm tempted to go in and make that black smaller. I mean, it's meant to be just very minimal, black separating the green and white. Also, if you look at the lance tip, it's a very subtle thing, but just the way I did the highlighting there was something new. If you don't stare at it, it actually it does have just a better effect than normal. So not a big deal. Haven't even based and flocked this guy yet, but there's one more Bretonnian knight to the collection. It's just so I can say that I did more than Malorian did. Now otherwise, because I got kind of burnt out painting all those halberdiers, I wanted to paint some terrain pieces that I've had for years that I never got around to it. And at the same time, one of the reasons I never did it is because when I did do them, I wasn't happy with how they turned out. So again, I'm trying with some new techniques here. The bricks on this thing were painted 4 different colors. I think red, yellow, tan, and gray. And then after that, they were just highlighted and washed until they look uniform enough, but they still look like there's some variability there. And it's kind of cool, because I didn't make up this technique. I learned it from a store owner locally who helped build my display board for my Empire Army. But I've noticed that ever since talking to him about it, now whenever I'm out and I'm looking at buildings or brick or stone or anything, I look at them more carefully, and I notice that even this technique, although I think it has a nice pleasing effect, I think it looks somewhat realistic, and I like how this building turned out. I think when you look at the real stuff, even every brick isn't one uniform color. There's 2 or 3 colors in every single one, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of these days I try that technique on something. So I'm just showing you the 4 sides of the building. Really nothing magical that I did here. And there's the top. So anyway, so now I have a painted watchtower. If you watch my battle reports, you've seen me use the ugly unpainted one for a long time. Here's a cottage. I actually haven't used this one very often because I don't love the way it looks. But now I did the same painting technique for the bricks. And I have a painted cottage. And if you can't tell, I'm kind of getting more into the aesthetic of the game. I've always loved the strategy of it, but I think it's just it's potentially a very powerful aesthetic experience when you see 2 nicely painted armies with a good-looking board with terrain that's painted and stuff like that. Now this is one I'm actually going to spend more time on how I did this. I took the Ruins of Osgiliath, which GW sells for the Lord of the Rings game, and they make just fantastic ruins. And I used the same technique, but for this one, So first of all, what you're looking at here is, I bought it several years ago. I primed it black and then I dry brushed it gray, and I've been using it ever since. And I'm not unhappy with it. I think it looks fine, and it took me 10 minutes to do it. But I decided that I wanted to try this new technique and just see if it turned out, and if it was only just a little bit better, I didn't care. So I chose, instead of the bright colors really that I used on the two buildings I just showed you, for this one I for the most part chose a little more subdued colors, especially with the terracotta and the dark green. That green, by the way, is the same thing I use for Men-at-Arms. But I did get a kind of a regal blue, which is kind of a bright blue, and the Towsip ochre and their old foundation paint, which tend to be brighter colors. So my thinking is I'm going to paint the stones, alternate these four colors among them, and then dry brush it with a gray. And then I know I'm going to at least wash it once, and then I'll just see where I'm at and see what I want to do. So when I painted them, I did just two lines of bricks. I painted them the different colors. I dry brushed them with the gray, and then I washed them with the brown. And it turned out like that. And I was actually pretty happy with it. I wasn't sure if I'd want to keep it that way. And sometimes when you do something in a small area, it's a different effect than when you do it on a large area. But I definitely felt after doing it like that it would be worth the time to do the whole building. And I like how you can see it just right next to each other, the subtle differences. Oh, yeah, I included a close-up shot. So you can see the colors are there, but it doesn't look ridiculous. Now that looks ridiculous. Yeah, so I just decided to start taking pictures as it went in progress. This took a lot more time than you would think. I'm actually kind of scared to think about how much time this took me. I'd put a book on tape on and just listened to it and spent hours one day when I had time. Yeah, hours and hours doing that. And then I took the gray and started dry brushing it, and it was tricky because I'm trying to get the colors down to where you don't see the red, the blue, and the yellow, but but you don't hide them either, that they're there. And so when I dry brushed it, obviously, in my mind it looks a lot better than it did, but it's not going to work just like that because the colors are too pronounced. That doesn't look like stone that came from different quarries or whatever. That just looks like, ridiculous toned down. So I did that for all of it, and then I washed it with the brown wash, and that made a big difference. And I was very, very happy with this. I wasn't quite as happy as I wanted to be because you can still see some colors are just too much. And when I dry brushed it, man, I didn't do it for like a minute. I did this a long time trying to get enough gray on there to tone down the colors. The building on the bottom, I think, is a lot better than the one on the top. I think I went back over the one on the top to put more gray there. But the one on the bottom, that's kind of what I was looking for. So then what I did was I went, after I washed it, I went back over it a day later with bleach bone and did a much lighter brush over it. And that's the point where I'm like, no, this is good. This is what I was looking for. It looks very consistent. It looks like stones that just are, just have a little variation between them. So, yeah, very, very happy with that. And then the same store owner that taught me this technique kind of held my hand through doing a little bit of a vine on there. My first thought was to do this all over it, and it ended up being kind of tedious and a pain. And so I decided just to do a couple of these vines, if you can see them. Yeah, I'm still toying around with playing with this a little bit more, like maybe doing a green wash in some of the corners and stuff. I'm happy enough with it though that I'm not sure that I want to risk it. So for those of you who are interested, this is the progression from top to bottom, left to right, progression of how the building went. So at the end of the day, when you compare the top left to the lower right, in my opinion, the lower right looks significantly better. I think it looks more realistic, it's more pleasing, it's everything like that. But the one on the top left took 10 minutes, and the one on the bottom right, with all said and done, probably took 10 hours. I would think. Maybe 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours. Just a lot of time. But in my mind, it's worth it because once it's done, and now I enjoy it. So that's the end of that segment of it. For the last little bit of the studio update, I just want to talk about my trip to Europe. So I wanted to put out there where I'm going to be and when and when I have time to actually do something Warhammer related, because there actually is a purpose for me going on the trip, and I'm busy most of the time. But you can pause it here, or if you're in these areas, Freiburg, Germany, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and Manchester, if you're in or near those areas and these dates would work, I'd be very, very interested with getting together with some of my subscribers. I would especially love to meet gaming groups. I mean, if you don't have that and we can get a game in, I would certainly love to do that. But I'd be especially interested in getting together with groups. I won't. The problem is I won't have a car, and I won't be familiar with the public transport. So if you say something like, "Hey, we're 45 minutes away," that might be more problematic than I would like. I mean, so I might be willing to consider it, but you might want to give me more information like, it's not a big deal, you jump on this train, it costs this much money, and once you get there, it's a 2-minute walk. I mean, something like that. But I'm not going to be familiar with the area, and again, I won't have a car or anything. Obviously, I'm not going to have an army, so if I'm going to play, I would need to borrow an army. At the same time, I'm happy just to hang out. If there's a gaming group playing games, I can hang out and watch, and heck, we could go to a pub and grab some beers and just hang out and talk Warhammer. That would be fun too. I'm hoping I can make trips to Europe every year or two, but even then, this is obviously kind of a rare opportunity. So that's it for my studio update, June 2013, and we'll be talking to you soon.